All right, I'll start off the event. Thank you guys for joining. This is the second time that I'm doing this kind of live Q&A type of thing. And we're still experimenting. We're still learning. You know, I'm live streaming on LinkedIn too. We're doing this on Zoom, but the Zoom live streams it to LinkedIn. So we'll see whether we get some people in there too. If you're joining through that, I'll try to also check out the comments on LinkedIn, and I'll try to reply to them too when we get to that point. The topic for today's B2B Marketing Live is analyzing or breaking down Refine Labs and Chris Walker's content strategy, marketing strategy, because I think it's just the best company to analyze. I mean, if you're in B2B marketing, if you're in B2B rev ops, you know, demand gen, all these different things, I think there's no better company to look at than Refine Labs. For the people who don't know Refine Labs, they are the founder and CEOs, Chris Walker. Big disclaimer up front, I don't have any inside information about Refine Labs. Everything that I'm going to talk about is one, based on just public information that you can see that they're doing and that they're talking about themselves, and two, some educated guesses about what I think their process looks like on the back end, but I'm not affiliated with Refine Labs. I don't know the insides of their business. I'm a big fan. You know, I think Chris Walker is one of the real ones who speaks truth, even when, you know, it might not be the most popular thing to say. And I think he really innovated a lot of things when it comes to B2B marketing. And I take a lot of inspiration from him. So, you know, this is my humble opinion about what they're doing. All right, so Refine Labs is a B2B company that is right now 100 employees. I think they just crossed 100 employees. It was started in 2019 by Chris Walker solo. It's bootstrapped. 3 years into the journey, I think he shared the revenue numbers in 2021. They did 6 million in revenue. And this year they're going to do 20 million in revenue. So, you know, good growth. Given that he started it in 2019 and bootstrapped it, and they're doing a lot of things right. So we're going to start off. I have kind of like a list of things I want to look at. And, you know, I digged a little deeper in preparation for this, but I think a good place to start is just looking at the website. So this is the website, refinelabs.com. First off, I want to talk about positioning because I think it's really interesting what they're doing. And they actually just went through kind of like a rebrand. Their tagline is, let's innovate your revenue engine the way that you innovate your product. And they say, as the world's first revenue R&D laboratory, and they work with the leading B2B software companies. So they're essentially a marketing consultancy. That's what I would call them. Obviously, they wouldn't agree. They would say that they are doing revenue R&D, and they do more than just B2B marketing. You know, the consulting and the execution that they do goes further into, you know, rev ops, sales, brand, positioning, you know, different aspects, but I would say most people would think about them as primarily a marketing agency or marketing consultancy. And they sell to B2B software companies, SaaS companies, from kind of what Chris Walker talks about, seems like kind of Series A, Series B plus companies. So, you know, funded, high growth, startups, scale-ups who, you know, want to dominate their market. And those are the types of people that they're selling to. I'm assuming they're selling both into CEOs of those companies as well as revenue leaders, so heads of marketing, heads of sales, heads of revenue, chief revenue officers, chief marketing officers. I think these are the types of job titles that they're selling into. First, I think it's really interesting that they call themselves a revenue R&D laboratory instead of saying that they're a marketing consultancy or marketing agency. They're kind of like a combination of all of them. I think if you dig into kind of how they go about serving their customers, it's a combination of basically consultancy, an agency, and an info product. They're an agency in the sense that they help you with a lot of the execution. Like they actually create assets for you. They do graphic design. You get access to a copywriter that helps you to actually write marketing copy. It's also consultancy. There's a lot of just where they help you figure out things on your own, where they just give advice, give input, and tell you, hey, do that. Hey, go here. Hey, try this. And then it's also an info product with the Vault that they recently launched, where, you know, they have a lot of videos and trainings and templates and processes and frameworks and research that they did in-house that they share with their customers. to provide information. So it's kind of like a combination of all of these things, but essentially it's a marketing company, right? They do marketing for companies. Until very recently, they were basically calling themselves or playing the whole demand gen wave, where they were basically saying that they help companies create demand and, are their demand gen provider. Now they rebranded and say that they're a revenue R&D laboratory, that they do revenue R&D. And I think it's really interesting because my assumption behind this is that, one, demand gen got very saturated. Chris Walker basically created the demand for demand creation. So it's now a thing that a lot of people do and say. A lot of people say, we do demand gen, we're demand creation, blah, 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 blah. And so it just became more crowded. Plus, there's a lot of people misusing that word who don't really understand what it means to create demand, and they just throw it in there like a buzzword, like personal branding, or any of these other things that people just throw in there because it's the thing that's currently cool, even though they might not actually be doing demand gen or personal branding or any of these things. So I think that was one reason. And I think the other reason is they're selling to these high growth, ambitious, funded Series A, Series B companies in tech. And so they talk about category creation, right? Creating their own category. And I think my guess, and again, this is an educated guess, I'm not sure whether this is actually what's going on, is that Chris Walker wants to showcase how to create a new category. And so he left the demand gen space because it got crowded. And now they're going to reposition themselves to say, we're doing revenue R&D. And now he's going to create demand for revenue R&D. And he's going to build that category where it becomes an actual thing, where it's not like there's like Refine Labs and they call themselves a revenue R&D thing, whatever, you can call yourselves whatever you want, but he's going to define that term so that there's going to be a whole ecosystem around that term. And there will be other revenue R&D labs springing up and other companies springing up who will say that they do revenue R&D, to basically show that he can build the playbook and then go out to customers and say, look, we've built our own category. We can do this for you. And so I think that's really interesting. And I think obviously before we go into marketing and before we go into LinkedIn and podcasting, I mean, the most important things is positioning, right? Like, how do you position what you do? Because all your marketing and messaging flows down from that. So that's why I spend a lot of time on this part and not jump into like the LinkedIn posts that they do, because I think this is just really smart and strategic what they're doing here and what they're trying out. We'll see how it goes. Other than that, on their website, they then have the whole kind of explaining what they mean with revenue R&D, their process, kind of step 1 to step 5. What you need to do, the infrastructure, right? It's just by enablement, just kind of explaining how their offer works. And then obviously they have a classic call to action, book a strategy call that's the same everywhere, important. And then when you click on it, you can book a call with their sales team, put in their information here. They do use self-reported attribution. Chris Walker talks about it. Basically, how do you track whether any of these marketing campaigns that you're running works when you can't track it with your attribution software? Is to just ask people how they heard about you. And so when people book a call with them, you put in your name, your job title, media budget, and then they ask you, how did you hear about us? And this is a free text field, unlimited characters. You can write a free flowing text. And the point of this is basically they want to figure out how people where the demand is created. How did people hear about Refine Labs? Where did people get educated and build trust with them? And we implemented this too, again, because I think it makes a lot of sense what Chris Walker's doing on our website. And it's really interesting what people tell you here, because what a lot of companies do, they just have a drop-down menu here. Either they don't ask this at all, and they don't even have that data point at all, and they just rely on their attribution software to tell them something, or they have like a drop-down menu of like 10 items, and it's like LinkedIn, podcast, event, email, cold outreach, and then you have to pick one. And I think anyone who is in B2B understands that these buying journeys are really complex. And so when you do this, and we've started getting this, people will actually tell you a story where they tell you, this person told me about you guys, and then I followed Finn on LinkedIn for 3 months. 3 months later, here I am. Right. And it tells you multiple things, that LinkedIn is working, that you can reach out to that person who recommended you. So they're creating their own category, revenue R&D. So right now, the whole mission is, from everything that you see basically on Chris Walker's socials and in their podcast, is building out this category. And it's really educating people around what they mean with revenue R&D, what it is, how it works, why it's important, what are the benefits of it to create demand for it. So I think that's really interesting. Another quick interesting thing about their website, they have a revenue R&D, which is just more info about their main offering, how it works, why you need it, benefits, really talking about benefits rather than features. You don't really find out the details of how their engagement looks like. Then the Vault, they have kind of like an info product that they sell now, which is in beta right now, where you can pay to get access to their research and IP and frameworks and processes. And then one really interesting thing, they have the pricing on the website, right? And when you look at their pricing, it starts at 20K a month, right? And so that's the lowest package. And so I'm assuming they're selling 12-month contracts, maybe even 2-year contracts, right? So 12 times this is $250,000 annual contract value. That's the minimum that they do, $250,000. And they have pricing on the website as a B2B company. This is already quite unique. We started putting our pricing on the website. And I think, again, why did they do this? When you think about, what you want to do when you buy any product, but the same applies to expensive B2B products and services, is you want to get a ballpark of what the price is going to be. Just a ballpark. You don't need the exact price, but you want to get a ballpark. If you consider this SEO agency and you heard good things about them, like you want to, before you reach out to them, you want to get a ballpark, like, am I going to pay 1K a month or am I going to pay 15K a month, right? Like, give me some range here, right? Because if it's too expensive, you're not going to buy from them anyway. And so the reason why most companies don't put their pricing on the website, and I talk with founders, is mainly 2 reasons. The first reason is they say that you're not supposed to talk about cost before you talk about value, right? They fear that if they're going to just put a price on here, they haven't been able to fully demonstrate the value of what they do, of why what they do is important and why it makes sense and what's the ROI and what the success has been for companies. And so that's why people need to book a sales call with a salesperson. And the salesperson will also not tell you the price up front. They first give you their, their monologue, 45 minutes to talk about everything that they do. Because again, there's this mantra of like, you got to first show the value before you then talk about cost. And I guess one thing that I would say to that is like, if that's the problem, I would rather try to figure out how you can demonstrate value before the sales call. How can you figure out to showcase to your prospects, to showcase to the people that are, interested in what you do before they book a sales call, through content, through podcasts, through website insights, through case studies, through testimonials. Then you don't have to worry about that anyway. And I think that's what Refine Labs does. And I think that's why they can so confidently put these high prices on here, because they're not reaching out to cold people who go to their website and are like, wow, that's crazy, 30K a month, I'm never going to work from them. The people who come to their website have listened to Chris Walker's podcast for a year, so they understand how deeply he understands the space and how valuable they are and how beneficial their process is, etc. And then the second one is companies just want to generate leads, right? Because if you don't put it here, if someone wants to know your pricing, what do they have to do? They have to book a call with you and put in their information. So like, you get an extra number on your thing where it says book the call. You have an email from someone. You can now follow up with them in an email sequence. Again, I don't really think it turns into more revenue, because if someone only books the call with you to figure out what's the pricing in here, they're not magically going to buy more likely. They just wanted to figure out the ballpark so they can now do their research on their own and say, okay, this is like 2K or 5K or 15K. I can now think about whether I can even afford this thing. And so you're just wasting your time trying to get these people. Where can I actually see the comments? Oh, there's comments pretty much on top of the food chain. Totally agree. That's cool. I'll try to also check the LinkedIn live stream comments. All right, LinkedIn. So we don't have to guess with Refine Labs what they actually do for marketing, because they talk about it all the time. And so I'll analyze other companies and they'll be a little bit more difficult, because you can see what they're doing, but you don't really know whether it's working or not. But Refine Labs and Chris Walker talk about what they're doing and how it's working all the time. So we don't actually have to guess where they get business. And those 2 places are LinkedIn and podcast. I think by far, I think LinkedIn is like 47 of their business is generated through LinkedIn. And then podcast is like close second with like 40%, something like that. I'm trying to get these numbers right. And then the remaining, I don't know, 15% is like I don't know where they come from, like SEO or referrals, or I don't know. All right, so let's look at those two channels and what they're doing on LinkedIn and on their podcast. So we're on LinkedIn here. Let's go to their company page. They have 112 employees. Cool. So first thing, they're posting on their LinkedIn page. They used to post, I think, basically every single day, almost multiple times a day. And now you can see they're posting basically once a month, but not much more often. So they actually stopped being active on LinkedIn. And you can see on their LinkedIn company page. And so you can see they get some good engagement here. They post like a combination of basically their employees' content. So let's focus on where they actually generate the business on LinkedIn, which is their employees. This is Chris Walker, this is the CEO, Cassidy, Chief Growth Officer, Carl Ferreira, I think he's head of sales, Megan, COO, Evan Hughes, VP of demand, Sam, VP of demand. And what you'll see is that all of these people are actively posting on LinkedIn. I think I looked at their company page. I think roughly a third of the people who work at Refine Labs, I think 40 out of the 112 people, so a little bit more than 1/3, posts very actively on LinkedIn, like multiple times a week. And so Chris Walker, we can take a look at what he's posting and how often he's posting. Chris Walker, 50 minutes ago, 120 likes, 30 comments. 1 day ago, a video, almost 1,000 likes, 135 comments. 2 days ago, a little picture of their revenue R&D strategy. They're creating the demand for revenue R&D. They're building up the category here right now. 621 likes. Video 2 weeks ago, 1,500 likes. Video, 1,600 likes. Picture, 800 likes. Chris actually started posting less. He was posting every single day, I think, for a long time. I think he kind of started ramping down. The last couple of weeks I've been seeing he posts kind of like 3 times a week, something like that. My assumption is that he's just got busy with growing a company and with the podcast and all the other profiles and employees posting. He just has other priorities right now. And I think he still writes all of these copies himself. So I'm assuming there's a bottleneck here where he just doesn't find enough time to post. From how they're performing, I don't think there's a reason for him to, other than that it's just lack of time and priorities right now. And that his own contribution to the overall demand that they're generating becomes smaller as all of these employees post. And you can see that he kind of posts a combination of like videos, images. He used to do only videos for a long while. He added some images in here with like mainly graphics. I think sometimes he throws in a text post, but rarely. If you would consume this content, in none of these, he talks about the Refine Labs offer. He doesn't talk about the Refine Labs pricing and why you should work with them and how they compare to a competitor and why Refine Labs is better than this company. And, all of these things, really all of this content is educational. All of this content is just adding value, educating people around marketing, around revenue growth, around RevOps, about revenue R&D that they now call it, around how you can grow your B2B SaaS company, essentially, right? It's all just adding values, adding value, adding value, adding value. He does a lot of long form video. I think for him, it's really interesting. He doesn't do this whole personal branding thing at all. A lot of people, and I started doing this more again too, are now starting to post these pictures of themselves, right? Like a selfie thing. And then they write like a personal post about themselves, which is performing well in terms of engagement. And I think it makes sense to add it to your content mix. That's why we started doing it. But he doesn't do any of that. Like literally, you don't know anything about his private life unless he like maybe shares like a sentence or two in any of these videos. It's all just subject matter expertise, education, adding value. B2B sales and marketing is so boring because companies don't have a process to innovate, to manage innovation. This is building the category revenue R&D, right? This is literally what he does here. That's his LinkedIn content. As you can see, we'll talk a little bit more about how he generates that content and how he comes up with topics, because I think it's really interesting. But then he's not the only person doing this at the company. Like Cassidy, who is their chief growth officer, you can see here, he posted 22 hours ago, 377 likes. 1 week ago, 363 likes. 1 week ago, 155 likes. Also last week, 133 likes. And again, he actually posts text posts mostly, so not images or videos. And it's same thing. It's education. It's pure subject matter expertise. There's no personal. There's nothing about the Refine Labs pricing or offer or any of this. It's just trying to add value to the people that they're selling to, which are CEOs, CMOs, head of marketing, heads of revenue, CROs of these B2B SaaS companies. Same for the other people. Here's their, director of sales, posted 4 days ago, 1 week ago, 1 week ago, 1 week ago, 28, 44, 129, 74 likes. He's active out there. Their director of sales. I mean, if a B2B company is posting actively on LinkedIn, most of them post on their company page. You can see that Refine Labs completely deprioritized their company page. They were more active there at one point. Now they deprioritized it. If a B2B company goes beyond that, then it's maybe the CEO posting or maybe the head of marketing posting. But to have their director of sales, Megan is their COO, she actually started being less active. I'm assuming she's just busy, but you can see like she's still posting, right? Like 269, 67, 98, 68. The COO, like which COO at a company is actively posting on LinkedIn? Evan Hughes, VP of Demand, 6 days ago, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, a lot of engagement. Sam, I think Sam's content is incredible. He's super active, probably one of the most active people at Refine Labs. I think he posts basically every single day. That's mainly what they're doing on LinkedIn. I think Dina asked a question. What did you ask, Dina? Are we supposed to discuss your analysis, or is it rather the analysis in focus? So I'm still experimenting with this format. My thought was that I'm going to go over this and kind of go through these things. And then at the end that we can discuss and questions and further points. If you have any extra comments, something I missed, because I know, Dina, you have probably a lot of thoughts on what they're doing on LinkedIn too and the other things. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say there too. So that's LinkedIn company page and a third of the people, and it's all just subject matter expertise, educating the market, adding value, and nothing about their product, nothing about their service, nothing about how they compare to competitors. It's all just building trust. And then the last thing I want to look at here, which I think is really interesting, to look at their ads, because you can actually publicly see what ads they're running. So when you go to company page, you put posts and then ads, you can actually see what ads they're running. And so let's look at what ads Refine Labs is running on LinkedIn right now. All right, here's a video from Chris Walker, 2 minutes. Here's a video from Chris Walker, 6 minutes. Here's a video, 8.5 minutes. Video, 8.5 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 30, 4 minutes. And that's it. This is all the ads they're running right now, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They literally have 7 videos running right now. And the videos are the exact same content that Chris is posting here on his LinkedIn. And so my best guess, what they're doing, this is a very simple strategy. Chris is posting, multiple times a week on his LinkedIn. They then look at, out of all of these posts and experiments that we're running, which ones got the most engagement from relevant people, from CEOs and heads of revenue and CROs and heads of marketing and at B2B SaaS companies. And then they probably, that's my best guess, they just took out of the hundreds of videos that he's posted since 2019, they just took the 7 best performing ones, and those are their ads, and that's it. And I think even more interesting, if you look at what most companies do, what is this ad? So this is, again, educational. The most important thing in B2B marketing right now, right? Educational, attribution mirage, the promise of attribution software. Why is it failing? If you want to execute marketing differently, you need to abandon principles. Here are the 5 tenets. It's just adding value. It's educational. Are you playing the long term? Right? None of this is transactional. None of this is like, work with us, we're great. And then if you click on any of these ads, where does this link go? Literally their homepage. There's no lead gen form. There's no landing page. There's no nothing. There's no fill in your information here to download our ebook. It just literally sends you to the homepage. I think what they're doing with these ads, again, they just post all of this content on Chris's LinkedIn organically. They see out of all of these, which ones performed organically the best with the people that we're selling to. Those are their ads. He actually talked about it in a podcast. I think the way that they set up their targeting, I don't know if they changed something or whether there's probably multiple layers to this, but it's also very straightforward. They basically have a list of companies that are an ideal fit for them, and they've built that list. And there are some criteria based on that, right? It needs to be a B2B SaaS company, and they need to have raised a Series A or Series B or whatever that thing is. And whenever there's a new B2B SaaS company that successfully raised a Series A, people will know about it because that's how this whole thing works. They make a big announcement, they get added to Crunchbase, and then you just add that company to your ads. And you just say, run my ads towards these 50 companies that we know are the perfect fit for us. And I'm curious, I would be super curious to find out how they target the job titles. They're obviously going to target, senior leadership. So they're going to target CEO, CMO, head of revenue, CRO, head of revenue. I'm curious whether they're also going to be targeting kind of the lower levels, whether they're going to be targeting the marketing managers, the marketing leads, the performance marketers, the brand marketers, the SEO specialists within those companies. I think it would be really interesting to find out. It's either just the senior decision makers or both, but it's very simple and straightforward, right? I think when you compare this to what most B2B companies are running, and I've been in the accounts of these B2B companies, the standard playbook is almost the exact opposite. They're not posting any organic content on their LinkedIn profiles of the people who work in the company. Maybe they post a little bit of content on the company page. When they post content, most of it is just transactional. It's just, here's how it works. Here's our features. Here's why you should check us out. Here's how we compare to competitor X. Here's this great thing someone said about us. Here's this award we won. None of it is about educating or adding value. And then the ads that most B2B companies are running at this size is lead gen ads. So they build a lead magnet. Usually it's like a checklist or an ebook. Usually one of the two. And then they have like an image ad or a text ad that says, download our thing, how to have better meetings, how to, run more effective this. And then you have to fill out a form, and then you get sent the checklist or the ebook. And that's how they're running their marketing. And you can see they're completely doing the opposite. And then on the back end, they often have like some complex kind of follow-up sequence set up, right? Then people put in their email to get the ebook. And then from that, it gets added to HubSpot. And then in HubSpot, they have like a follow-up sequence where people get pounded with emails that, again, are usually transactional about the offer of the company, about how great they are, rather than educating the market. This is super simple. I mean, it's literally like, what topics do our customers care about? Add value. Create videos and images, post them on LinkedIn, which ones perform the best. These are our ads, and then just run them towards companies that we know are a good fit for working with us, because we've worked with a lot of companies like them. This is their main channel. This is how they generate, I think, 47% of business. So clearly it's working. There's even more people posting at their company. So then let's look at the second main channel that they use, which is their podcast. So they actually have 3 podcasts. They started out with one podcast. It was called State of Demand Gen. It's now rebranded to Revenue Vitals, alongside with a new category that they're building, Revenue R&D. And then they have 2 other podcasts. They have Stack and Growth, and they have Talent Destination. Revenue Vitals is really just a Chris Walker solo podcast. It's just Chris Walker talking, answering questions, sharing his advice, sharing insights, talking about the trends that he sees in the market, how they run marketing, adding value. Again, just purely educational. Stack and Growth is similar, around basically B2B marketing, go-to-market strategy, growth in B2B. And this one's run by the team. So this is kind of like from what I understand, a community effort of the other people working at Refine Labs. Sam sometimes makes an appearance. Cassidy makes an appearance. Lindsay makes an appearance. Carl, their director of sales, makes an appearance. It's basically adding a second podcast because the first one worked so well, showcasing the expertise of all the employees and having an additional channel. And then the third one, this one is run, I think, by Megan, their COO, and then their head of people or chief people officer. They're running it together. And this one's basically, so both of these are basically around B2B marketing, demand gen, growth, rev ops, all of this, go to market. This one's more about talent destination. This one's about how to attract and hire and retain great talent. I think this one's really interesting. I haven't listened to this podcast. My assumption is that the strategy behind having this podcast is twofold. One, they want to become a talent destination. They want to attract the best marketers on the planet to work at Refine Labs. What's one way to do that is to showcase to the world how they work, how they approach hiring people, how they hire people, what are their criteria, what the culture is like, what people are working on, how much responsibility that they get. And this is partly the topics that they talk about, right? so that people can listen to it and get a good feel for what it would be like working at Refine Labs. And two, I think because they're working with high growth B2B SaaS startups, this is probably a big problem that their customers are dealing with, which is, how to attract and hire and retain great talent. And so this is still solving a problem that the customers are dealing with. So it's aimed at the same ICP, just adding value from a different angle. All right, let's go to one of these podcasts. They publish them on obviously all the main platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and by far the most are Spotify. And then second is, I think, Apple. All the other ones you can basically forget about, I would say, in my opinion, these days. All right, let's look at Revenue Vitals. There's an episode today, episode 7 days ago, 7 days before that, 3 days before that, 2 days before that, 2 days before that, 4 days before that, 3 days before that, a week before that, 5 days before that. So you can see that basically on average, they post at least one podcast a week, maybe 2 or 3 per week. Now it's interesting, how do they generate the podcasts? How do they produce this podcast? And I think they're being really smart about that. Where do they get the content to put into the podcast? It's a combination of multiple. One, Chris Walker is doing a live TikTok every week on Tuesday. So every Tuesday, I think at 3 p.m. Eastern time, he's on TikTok live answering questions. They record that whole thing, and then afterwards they upload the recording to the podcast. Another one is that Chris Walker guests on a lot of other people's podcasts. He goes on other people's podcasts. They invite him on. They say, hey, I would love to have him as a guest. He says, yeah, sure. He just makes sure that he gets the recording afterwards, and then they upload that on their podcast too, right? So for example, this one here, episode 17, this one is an interview that he did on Tom Hunt's podcast. This one is a interview that he did on the Revolution podcast. This is a TikTok live that he did. This one was an invite-only event that they did for customers. Another TikTok live, best of TikTok live, Ryan Stewart. So here he was on Ryan Stewart's podcast, right? They have 2 main sources for these podcasts. One, every week he does a TikTok live, and then he also goes on to other people's podcasts, and they upload those interviews onto there too, which I think is a brilliant strategy. You get the distribution of the other people, you get exposure to their audience, and then you get free content that they can upload on their podcast. The way that they do it with the Stack and Growth is that they do live events every 2 weeks, I think. So every 2 weeks they do this. Yep, you can see here, December 7th, December 21st, January 4th, January 18th. So every 2 weeks, people at Refine Labs do a live thing. Basically what we're doing here, I mean, that's where I got the idea. I think it's brilliant. I'm blatantly copying and stealing here, because I think it just makes so much sense. I mean, I think that's why Chris Walker is winning. And I think that's why I like Chris Walker, is because everything that they do, it makes sense, right? So they have this event every 2 weeks. They prepare a topic, things that they see in the market, things that they want to talk about, educating the market. And then they open it up to questions. And what that does is you get actual inputs from your audience to guide you what you should be talking about. So they do that every 2 weeks. And for the talent destination, I'm actually not sure. I think they just kind of internally sit together and upload a podcast. You can see here they're also uploading 1 episode a week. And here they are uploading more often. So they upload all of the recordings from the event that they do. But then they also, when they are on other podcasts for the team, they do the same thing. They upload it there. So that's their podcast. And now to go back to LinkedIn, where do you guys think he gets, Chris Walker gets all the videos from? It's from these exact events, and same for the other people, right? So it's really, when you do this whole content thing, right, you want to figure out how you can repurpose things and how you can streamline that stuff so that you can do a lot with little. Every week, Chris Walker is on TikTok live doing a TikTok live. So that takes care of TikTok. Then they record the whole thing and they upload that thing onto their podcast. That takes care of Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And then they also record it and create video snippets based on the highlights and based on certain question that he answers, edits them into short form videos. And those are the ones that get posted on LinkedIn, right? And same for the live events that they do for the Stack and Growth thing, where they record the whole thing, they have a live event, then they upload the recording to their podcast, and then they create video snippets that they can then use in other places on their company page, on their personal pages. And that's mainly the playbook. And these are by far the 2 biggest channels. I'll just quickly go over some of the auxiliary channels that they use. I try to find out if they run Facebook ads. I don't think they are, but I couldn't find anything. Would be interesting. I know that Chris Walker 3 years ago was super bullish on running Facebook ads for B2B, We're running Facebook retargeting ads for ourselves. Couldn't figure out whether they run Facebook ads for themselves right now. They do have a YouTube channel. They started being less active on here. Here they kind of upload every once in a while. I think mainly they upload their video recordings from the second podcast, from the Stacking Growth podcast. They just upload the video recording here. I think this is like a Stacking Growth live, right? So they recorded the whole thing. This was an in-person podcast that he did, but you can see they kind of stopped being active on YouTube. They upload it much more regularly on YouTube. I'd be curious why they decided to deprioritize. With Refine Labs, when they do something, I think they probably have a reason why they do it. With other companies, I would probably have a different opinion. But when Refine Labs decides to do these things, it probably has a good reason. In my opinion, it's a missing opportunity because they have all this video content already that's already created. They don't need to make special content on there. And with all this category that they're going to be building, whether it first was demand gen and now revenue R&D, once they build the category and there's demand around that, there will be lots of organic people searching for these terms and wanting to get educated about what this means, what revenue R&D is, how it works. And one of those platforms, and I mean, that's how I do a lot of my research, is YouTube. I mean, you just put in a keyword and you get suggested videos. And then I think the last one that I have here that I wanted to talk about was just quickly TikTok. They started doing more on TikTok. As you can see here, the Refine Labs company has a TikTok channel with lots of videos from anyone in the team, lots of Chris Walker videos, but also other Cassidy, Carl, Lindsay, I think, lots of other people in the company. And same thing, the way that they generate this content, I think some of this is like native, like this one is created natively for TikTok. But most of these videos, for example, these ones are just from their Stacking Growth live event, right? So it's just repurposing. Again, same thing. They take what they already have, which is mainly their live event, they record it, they use it on the podcast, they use it on LinkedIn, and then they also create these small snippets and edit them platform native, right? They make it vertical instead of horizontal, right? They add these like subtitles in here in the middle. They make it super short. So this is a 2-minute video. I think the uploading limit on TikTok right now is 3 minutes. Most videos under 1 minute for perform best. So that's how they repurpose it. And now Chris Walker also started posting on his own personal TikTok. And I wanted to just show one example because I think it's really interesting. Where are you, Chris Walker? Here, Chris Walker 171. He also started posting here. As you can see here, some of these are native that he records where he gets like a question and then he records a quick answer. These are from the podcast that are pre-recorded and just repurposed. Same with these ones. And then he recently had one go viral here, this one. So this one is a TikTok native video, green screen. We made like a 1-minute video about, SEO. And this one got 377,000 views and 44,000 likes on TikTok, right? He posted this like 2 weeks ago or something. And then again, this was created natively on TikTok. It performed really well. It's by far his best performing video, 377K views. 44,000 likes. And I think what's also interesting, people say like, don't do TikTok, B2B, no senior decision makers. It's all just teenagers. If you look at the comments, you just literally need to read the comments to find out that that's not true. But this is also the viral one. But if you go into some of the more subject matter expertise that are slightly longer form, it will be even more skewed towards like older people, So I think it's really interesting. And then repurposing. This one went viral on TikTok. He used that inside. He's like, something's resonating here. When you go to his LinkedIn, boom, right? It's literally the same video. He reposted it on LinkedIn. He wrote up a little text here that goes alongside the post because that's what LinkedIn wants. This copy is not on TikTok. It's a different caption. So the caption is LinkedIn native, but otherwise the video is just copy pasted. He added some captions underneath because LinkedIn likes that. And it performed really well. It got like 1,700 likes on LinkedIn, 324 comments. This is probably like 200,000 views on LinkedIn, something like that. So I think this is just something that they in general are being really smart about, which is just getting close to the customer. How can you get as close as possible to the actual questions that people want you to talk about? That's why they do these live events. That's why he does TikTok live. That's why they do the Stacking Growth live, so that they get actual question from actual people. and then they record the whole thing, and then they repurpose really smartly. They have the TikTok live now, and then they turn that into a podcast, and then they clip the videos and post them on LinkedIn. And then he posts some native things on TikTok to experiment. And then when it goes viral, he repurposes on TikTok again, on LinkedIn again, right? So they're just being really smart about how they use their resources. And that's why they have, exponentially more output than most B2B companies who have 10 times more employees, right? Because they just repurpose really smartly. One last point I wanted to make, because I think when people see this, it's like, that's a lot, right? I mean, he posts on LinkedIn, and all the other employees post on LinkedIn, and they have 3 podcasts, and he's guesting on other podcasts, and he's doing a TikTok live, and he's creating native content for TikTok, and then they post some of that content on YouTube, and it's just a lot, right? And of course, when they have 3 podcasts and 50 people actively posting on LinkedIn, all building trust and expertise. But that's not how it started, right? He started in 2019, bootstrap company. He started out solo. How he started out was just posting on LinkedIn by himself, just him, every single day, writing a LinkedIn post, posting it. And then eventually it grew, right? Then eventually he added the podcast where he did these live events. Then he had a podcast, and was just him running the podcast, just one podcast, and him posting on LinkedIn. And then as the company grew, they stacked on top of that, right? Because they validated LinkedIn and they validated podcasts. So it's like, of course, we're going to do more LinkedIn. Of course, we're going to have all of our other employees post SME content on LinkedIn too. And of course, we're going to try to have more podcast episodes, and then eventually more podcasts. They have 3 podcasts now, but that's not how it started, right? So I think that's just on how to get started. Are there any comments, any questions? Dina, if you want to share some of your own thoughts on this, raise your hand. This was basically my monologue. There's 2 questions. All right. I guess most things that Chris is posting on LinkedIn would not work for other people who are less famous. It would be interesting to know how he started on LinkedIn. Did he also post personal content, e.g. to gain more following first? What would you recommend to a founder freelancer starting out on LinkedIn? I think I started following Chris in 2020, so it was relatively early. I think he started in 2019. From what I remember, I mean, I can't scroll all the way back. It was always just subject matter expertise. I don't think he ever really posted like personal content about his life or his travel or his dog, something like that. I think in the beginning, it was always text posts that he wrote. He actually talked about why he started doing videos, which is that people started plagiarizing his text posts. He started posting on LinkedIn, it got good traction. Then other people just took his text posts and just copy pasted them. And so he was like, all right, I'm going to do video because you can't repost my videos and still pretend it's your own thoughts. So I think he started out with text posts. He already had a perspective because he was already working in marketing for, I think, a decade. He was running marketing for, I don't know if it was a B2B SaaS company, but it was a B2B company. So he was already marketing leader. And the reason why he left that company was because they didn't agree with his philosophy around how marketing works nowadays. So that was, I think, mainly his content, just sharing his perspective. And I think back then he had less about like how to grow your company to 100 employees because he didn't have that. But he was just sharing about why he thinks the current model about lead gen and lead magnets and running PPC campaigns is just not effective anymore. And I think that's how he got a lot of traction. And then he found this whole demand gen thing, and he kind of played that, squeezed the shit out of that. And now he's repositioning to kind of revenue R&D. I think the podcast started out with basically his, when people messaged him on LinkedIn based on the couple of LinkedIn posts that he was writing, and they were like, hey, I would love to ask you some questions, pick your brain. He would just record that call. And that was his podcast in the beginning, I think. So it was just very with AirPods. So there's low production value, just starting with what you have, I think. All right, I'm also going to wrap up now. This was fun. I think I went a little over time. Maybe I need to extend this to an hour and a half next time. I'm doing this on Zoom as well as LinkedIn Live. So if you want to be in here with us, see the people, join us on Zoom next time. I'm playing around with this LinkedIn Live thing to see whether it organically drives some, awareness for this. So in 2 weeks, we'll see each other again. I haven't decided on the topic yet. If you guys have any inputs, thoughts, what you guys think I should talk about, I currently like this format of analyzing marketing strategies. The next one I would want to do is Gong, because they're incredible what they're doing. And it's really working for them. I mean, They're extremely successful too. And there's some new things there. But yeah, if you have any other thoughts, let me know. We'll see each other in 2 weeks. If you want to join, I'll both create a LinkedIn event and on our website under the Learning Center live Q&A, you can sign up for the Zoom and ask your questions next time. So Wednesday, 4 p.m. CET. Thank you guys for watching or joining and asking these questions. And we'll keep doing this. Appreciate you guys. Bye-bye.